الصبر نور ويقين لله در الصابرين. نعم الأخي ولا تهن أبدا وعزمك لا يلين.
الصبر نور ويقين
لله در الصابرين. نعم الأخي ولا تهن أبدا وعزمك لا يلين.
قدر من الله مضى فابسم إذا حل القضاء، لن يضيق بك الفضاء فالله مولاك المعين.
قدر من الله مضى فابسم إذا حل القضاء، لن يضيق بك الفضاء فالله مولاك المعين.
الصبر نور ويقين
لله در الصابرين. نعم الأخي ولا تهن أبدا وعزمك لا يلين. الصبر نور ويقين لله در الصابرين. نعم الأخي ولا تهن أبدا وعزمك لا يلين.
انظر بلاء الأنبياء يسمو بهم نحو العلا، فبهم يكون الاقتداء نعم الهداة المهتدين.
انظر بلاء الأنبياء يسمو بهم نحو العلا، فبهم يكون الاقتداء نعم الهداة المهتدين.
الصبر نور ويقين
لله در الصابرين. نعم الأخي ولا تهن أبدا وعزمك لا يلين. الصبر نور ويقين لله در الصابرين. نعم الأخي ولا تهن أبدا وعزمك لا يلين.
الله يعلم ما يكون والأمر في كاف ونون، فلا تهب ريب المنون واذكر يوفى الصابرون.
الله يعلم ما يكون والأمر في كاف ونون، فلا تهب ريب المنون واذكر يوفى الصابرون.
الصبر نور ويقين
لله در الصابرين. نعم الأخي ولا تهن أبدا وعزمك لا يلين. الصبر نور ويقين لله در الصابرين. نعم الأخي ولا تهن أبدا وعزمك لا يلين. أبدا وعزمك لا يلين. أبدا وعزمك لا يلين.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, first of all, apologies for the delay. There's always things that happen. Technically, we have to take care of sometimes. But welcome back. Welcome back to Islamic OASIS Online on a very, inshallah, a very interesting discussion on Palestine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, dear brothers and sisters, mentions, Allah said, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his slave Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from Makkah, Masjid al-Haram, Makkah, there to Masjid al-Aqsa in Palestine. And this area of Palestine, alladhi barakna hawlah, and we have made this area blessed. We are all aware, brothers and sisters, of what is taking place in Palestine, the occupation of Masjid al-Aqsa and Palestine in general, including many of the Muslim lands, the occupation of the minds of the Muslims, the colonization of the Muslims. And on the top of that, what has the great betrayal, that as if the issue of Palestine belongs only either to the Palestinians or to the Arab, or to, if not, to the Gaza, people of Gaza, for instance. Yani in the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years since the loss of Palestine in 1948, 47, what we have seen is that Masjid al-Aqsa, or the issue of Palestine, it was Islamic issue. Then from Islamic issue, it became the issue of between just the Arab. And then from there, it became the issue of Palestinians. And from there, now, even the Palestinians are not the ones, maybe the people of Gaza. So to a point where no one cares anymore. It has been called a normalization of occupation upon the Muslims. And lastly, we are here with our brother discussing the issue of Palestine. Maybe some of you might be surprised that, why is it that we are discussing the issue of Palestine with somebody who's not an Arab, let's say. And the whole idea was to show that this issue of Palestine, the issue of Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak, has nothing to do with the Arab, or has nothing to do with the Palestinians. This has to do with the Muslims and the Islamic Ummah. Akhi, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So let's begin, because of the time, you already lost 18 minutes on this. But so what's the great betrayal? What's the betrayal are we talking about here when it comes to Masjid al-Aqsa?
I guess before we really jump into it, I do want to add on to what you said. And I think it was an amazing point, right? In the sense that if you look at this issue of Palestine, amongst the community, amongst the online sphere, amongst the Muslims, it's almost as if we were talking about this a little bit before the stream. It's almost as if no one cares anymore, right? It used to be something that burned. You saw the images, the slaughter, the chaos and stuff like that, and it used to evoke sort of the heartstrings of Muslims. But it seems even that is not really happening anymore, to the point where, like you said, there's this betrayal going on. That, if we're honest and if we're looking at the history, was going on for a long time, right? But it's a betrayal that's almost becoming so mainstream, so normalized in your face, nowadays, right? We have whole countries, Muslim countries.
We will do what we want. What are you going to do?
Yeah. You have neighboring Muslim countries normalizing relations with Israel.
What is that? Normalization. Is this? Why the normalization?
In many ways, it's sort of a push into the narrative that's been created, right? This sort of solution that has to come, right? There's this problem that's been going on forever, right? That's kind of this idea. Look, this area has been a conflict zone forever. Look, this area has been contentious for Jews, for Muslims, for Christians, or so they say, right? And we need to kind of intervene now and just make things go away, right? And it seems like that's almost the attitude. Let's just make this problem go away. And to be frank, though, I think we need to take that curtain back. Why is this even a issue? If I can share something personally, like you mentioned, I'm not from the Arab, right? I grew up in basically a Jammu Pakistan, you could say, household, and we used to see this happen all the time, right? And it used to be something that was inflamed, in the community, and it's not any longer.
But do you think? Look. So, this has been done obviously by design, right? Where you have one by one, this issue of Palestine has been, they don't want it to be that hot. They want it to become normal. They just said, okay, why are we fighting for this land? It's already occupied. It's gone. Is the idea to make the Muslims say, okay, you've lost it, finished, don't even think about it anymore? This is, even to think about it is like a lost cause. Is that what they want us to think? What is the issue here?
I think there really is a lot of confusion, right? Some of the things we hear, right, is that, look, like you said, it is a lost cause. We can't do anything about it. There's larger powers at play. You hear it dinner parties, things like that. For example, hey, look, the Jews rule the world. We can't really do anything about it. You hear, for example, that if we want to be successful here in America, in the West, abroad, we have to follow the example of the Jews. And this is really a lost cause. And sometimes, unfortunately, you even hear that it's not really our problem. This is their problem. The Palestinians, the Gazans, the Arab, and stuff like that. And I think as a community, as Ummah, we're really naive on three kind of main, you could say, spheres. We're kind of naive and maybe ignorant, some of us, on the Islamic importance of this holy land. We're kind of naive a little bit on how politics works, why this is the situation there is, and also, unfortunately, we're a little bit naive on our own history. Just as a small example, right? We were running sort of like a dawah table booth, right, at one of these larger like national conventions a couple of years ago, and I remember just having this particular conversation with one of the attendees there, right? It was a sister, right, from like a Palestinian origin, and we were kind of getting into history of it, right? Like, hey, have you heard about the Nakba? Have you heard about the creation of Israel? Have you heard about why we're in the situation we are? And the response was kind of really surprising. It was like, no idea. I think my parents kind of talked about it. Oh, I think, maybe, right? And it seems to a point like it's like the Palestinian resistance is kind of like, falafels and scarves and kind of allying with every, you could say, people across the board, whether they're, standing with the haqq or they're standing with the batil, whether they're pushing, what is good or what is evil. So I think there's a lot of confusion, to be honest with you.
So if you look at Masjid al-Aqsa situation, or if you look at, let's say, Palestine now, let's forget the West, meaning let's forget those who are living in the West. Masjid al-Aqsa or Palestine itself, what happened here? And look, for instance, like you said, the Jews, this idea that the Jews rule the world, right? I mean, this is something that's pushed. I mean, a country that survives on tourism, money given on, a country that survives basically by, and the U.S. kind of gives it money to survive, right? I mean, it's surviving on charity in many ways, right? A country like this, second the most dependent country on aid of United States after Egypt, and even Egypt, it seems like it's almost that they're giving them this money so that Egypt kind of goes along with whatever.
I know that.
Right?
That's crazy.
I mean, this is the realities of Egypt, and this is what reality of so-called, and this Israel is. So how do we look at that when we look at this and we say this whole idea that Israel is or Israel is or the Jews are running the world? Why is this even out there?
So I mean, part of it obviously is look, you see a certain picture a certain way, that's exactly what you're going to take in, right? Unfortunately, what the pictures that we see in our TV screens, like our newspapers, is the militarized Israeli boot on the necks of the Muslims, on the necks of the Palestinians, waltzing their way into the Masjid al-Aqsa, their hands on Muslim women there, and on the other side, Muslims with maybe stones, Muslims in slaughter. And we've been seeing these images like for our whole lives of where there's a people that seem to be in power, and on the receiving end, Muslims that are weak, useless, powerless. And you start to feel like this is the reality. This is just how things are. And I think as Muslims, like, we need to really definitely take a step back. And that's what Allah brings us to, is that this dunya, this life, these powers, everything dies, everything fades except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And if we're starting to think that, hey, these powers to be these times, that's just how it is. That's how it's always going to be. We're actually flipping like our Islamic sort of understanding, because as a Muslim, it's only Allah and His religion that stay forever. Everything else shifts, changes, ages, dies, rises and falls, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us, how many times has it been that a small power has defeated a larger power, right? And sometimes these kind of conversations seem kind of ajib, weird between Muslims. But if you think about it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dedicated a whole surah, Surah Rum, on the political ongoings of the superpowers of the day during the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? You had the Persians on one side and the Romans on one side. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is drawing our attention to this. Look at this scene over here. The Romans, people of Rome, the Romans have befell a loss, but they will again come to a victory, right? Kind of paraphrasing a couple of these ayat. And it kind of begs the question, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring this to our attention? And the reason is because, like, these things are important. We have to understand how the world works. And it's kind of interesting, right? If you look at, a lot of this I kind of picked up as I was sort of researching this topic and making the series on the Holy Land, the Blessed Land, answering some of these questions, right? Why exactly do, for example, Jews care about this? Why should we as Muslims care about this? Because unfortunately, you find that, like, people even say nowadays, okay, so many people are dying, let's just leave it. Let's just leave it, let's go away. I mean, what's the big deal? It's a piece of land. So why is it important?
Gaddafi, Lanatullah alayhi, used to say, we'll just build another masjid and we'll just call it Al-Aqsa. So why don't we just do that? But say, let's, in 2 minutes, can you say, because there's so many things to discuss, what makes Masjid Al-Aqsa important for the Muslims? Because a lot of people have no clue, right? A lot of people, what is this, Masjid Al-Aqsa? Okay, supposedly people say things like, oh, okay, if you go back into history, well, it should belong to the Jews. There's a lot of things that are there, right? Because Bani Israel and them going there to that land. What made this land Muslim lands?
So, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, this land is important because, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it one of the distinct lands. And for the Muslims, obviously, it was their first Qibla. It was the Qibla, actually, as I was researching this, that was the Qibla of the Muslims for 14 years, right? Even after Hijrah, it was like, a year or months later before it was changed.
Yeah.
So it was the first Qibla of the Muslims. It was a land that Umar ibn al-Khattab liberated, right? Under the, under his Khilafah. Yeah. And this was a land that is blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and is a land that prophets walked upon, right?
So it's the Umari treaty
that
brings this land under the Muslims.
Yeah.
So that's once now. So the Shari'i ruling, meaning that once a land is under Sharia, was ruled by Sharia, it cannot ever return to kufr. So that's what it is. It's the Umari treaty that brings this land under the Muslims and makes it important for the Muslims that this is the issue, right? I mean, because a lot of people, they just might go back and they look at the history and they say, well, if historical, maybe let's go back thousands of years ago and you might find Bani Israel there. Although Bani Israel also Muslims, but the importance is that the Muslims should know the reason why this land became Muslims and a Muslim land is once the Muslims took over, Umar ibn Khattab comes and according to, signs that treaty with them, and this land and this whole area comes under the land of the Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the importance of it. Okay, so now how long does this stay in the Muslim, under the Muslims, and then what happens here that we lose it again?
Yeah, so basically the Umri Treaty, right? When Umar took over, that was maybe the first peaceful transfer of ownership of that land, right? Always been a contentious area, and we had it until weakness, division kind of formed within the Muslim Ummah, right? And we had these divisions that the Christians and specifically the Crusaders used, right? And so Jerusalem, the Holy Land, Al-Quds, became occupied by the Crusaders, right? And this is something we know, in our history. One of the heroes that, alhamdulillah, we still remember is Salahuddin Ayyubi, right? And that he finally liberated the land of Al-Quds. So that was the first lapse, I guess, in our ownership, right? So 1400 years, the Muslims ruled, right? We're rulers. And I think this is kind of another interesting thing. We find ourselves in a very unique situation, is that even though Muslims were divided during the time of, Salahuddin Ayyubi, and before that, when the Crusaders occupied Jerusalem, we were still rulers. We were still people that manifested our destiny. We were still people that had objectives. We were still people that were working on our strategic interests, and so on and so forth. And it was because of the situation that someone like Salahuddin Ayyubi, right, and those that became before him, right, could consolidate, could build, could direct and reconquer.
I mean, how important is it here to know that even Salah ad-Din Ayyubi himself was not an Arab?
Extremely.
Right? I mean, he is a Kurdi, he's not an Arab, meaning that, again, it begs the point that the Ummah understood the importance of Palestine. Again, it was not the Arab issue. It was an Islamic issue, and it had to be solved according to Islam. I mean, I was reading this quote by one place. It said, it was the Khalifa of the Muslims who liberated Masjid al-Aqsa first time. It was the Amir of the Muslims who liberated the second time, and it will be Amir of the Muslims again that will liberate it, inshallah, this time. So, talk about that a little bit, meaning that what is up with Sultan Salah ad-Din comes from Mosul area, and all of a sudden he's so he's basically like his only goal in life was like fully Masjid al-Aqsa, right? What makes a person like that? What made him that way, that Masjid al-Aqsa, Palestine, had to be taken out of the hands of the Crusaders?
I think partly, and definitely we can add on to this, is like understanding the mission of Islam, right? And it seems sometimes like alhamdulillah, we're all Muslims, right? Allah subhanahu bless us with Islam, but in the world we're living in today, it's as if we have forgotten the mission of Islam, right? And the mission of Islam isn't just to, for example, pray 5 times a day, which, I mean, obviously we need to, it must be done. It's not just to pay our individual zakat, right? It is to make the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the highest in the land, to make the reign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supreme. It's to it's to work for the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I do want to take one pause here, if you don't mind, is that this issue of the Holy Land, the Jews, right? They come to you and they say it was promised by Allah. God promised us the Holy Land, and this is true, right? In Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of narrates this, right? The Holy Land was promised to Bani Israel, right? But under certain conditions, and the first condition was believe in Allah, right? And I guess just to kind of set the scene, like Bani Israel were just rescued by Musa alayhi salam from the clutches of Pharaoh. They saw with their eyes that the army of Pharaoh was drowned. Pharaoh himself was drowned. The superpower at the time was destroyed, obliterated with their own eyes. They come and they move away from Egypt, and the command comes, the Holy Land is for you, right? Go and fight. And their reaction is, us? You want us to fight them? They're strong. They're big people. We can't do it. Musa, you and your Lord go fight. And because of their arrogance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala banished them for 40 years to wander aimlessly. And sometimes that's what it kind of seems like, is that as Muslims, we have seen the miracle of Islam. We have seen the miracle of how a people that were nobodies, literally nobodies, no one cared about them. Like, I mean, look,
and rule for 1400 years, and defeat Rome and Persia, the superpowers at the time. I mean, nothing but a miracle in reality, with almost nothing.
I mean, like, we can't make comparisons nowadays, right? Okay, look, there's
continuing to rule, the Uthmani Khilafah going on into Europe, and
I mean, your point is, it's amazing, right? Like, sometimes we make comparisons, right? We're living in the modern world. We're like, okay, there's Russia here, there's Egypt here, there's, we're making a mental calculation, numbers, we're running numbers, right? And if you compare, let's say, any even Muslim country, state, any state, whatever, to the state of Medina, right? The city of Medina, the state of the Muslims, as it was incepted, versus the Roman Empire, versus the Persian Empire, versus, it's not even comparable. It's like, so going back to it, it's as if we've lost that mission, the mission of Islam, in the sense is that we're satisfied with, my kid's okay, I'm going to school.
I mean, we don't even have a mission anymore.
Yeah,
that's not even a mission. My children, that's not even a mission. Even animals do that, right? Even animals just take care of themselves, take care of their families, take care of this thing. That's just survival, instinctual reactions to your existence. That's what it is, right? That's not what people who have a mission do, right? I mean, people who have a mission in life, their qualities and their actions are completely different than a person who has no So now Salahuddin comes, rahimahullah, he comes around, he does what he needs to do, gets rid of crusaders out of the lands of the Muslims. But the thing, and then I don't know, because this is part one. I want to stick with this area still, because if I go into part two, I actually wanted to discuss, the British Mandate, the Balfour Declaration, and the 6-Day War, all of those things. But what I heard was that the role of the ulama, for instance, when it came to even to the upbringing of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, rahimahullah, right? I mean, if you look at Abu Bakr Tartushi, there were scholars like this, and then you had Ghazali and others who wrote Ihya Ulumuddin, for instance, and this book becomes so famous in Mosul, and out of Mosul comes Nuruddin Zanki and Imaduddin Zanki, and all of these people come out, and then I mean, look at that time and look at today and say, what should be the role of the ulama? That 100 years of work of the ulama, that finally brings somebody like Salahuddin, where the Ummah had almost forgotten what had to be done with Masjid Aqsa. So what should we be thinking about? I mean, it's been 100 years since this time, Masjid Aqsa. How many years has it been?
Oh, an interesting question, right? So, well, let me tell you this. So, the entity of Israel, or the Zionist entity, state of Israel, whatever you want to call it, right? It has now existed at 2021 for 72 years.
72 years.
Do you know, at the top here, how long the Crusaders had Jerusalem?
100 years.
86.
86. All right. Well,
so
we're not there yet.
So we're not there yet. And inshallah, before that time, we see that change too.
So 72 years. Well, this is good. This is very good, because I for some reason in my head it was, I don't know what I was calculating, but I was thinking, I think it's almost 90 years or 92 years.
Well, that's when the official. It was officially recognized, right? After World War II, right, 1948, till now it's about 72 years, right? Yeah. But yeah, so we still have 14 years,
So here's the thing. So the Muslims, 86 years, Crusaders take control of this land. They're able to rule it, whatever, and then they, even after 86 years of rule in this land, they fall apart. Yeah. Meaning the Muslims return. They say, okay, you've had your fun. It's time to go home. So now you have these these Ashra, what do you call them? Ashra-Kanazi Jews, something like this. These Jews, Europeanized Jews, who are somehow they made this their home.
I think that's a really interesting story, because look, there's this narrative as if they came and they established it and they made this at home.
Yeah, that's what I wanted you to.
But they were exported and imported.
Yes,
from Europe
by the British.
Right. So
even they couldn't do it themselves.
And again, and you might think, okay, fine, they couldn't do it themselves, but then they figured it out.
Okay.
But that's not the case whatsoever, right? The president-elect, the president we have right now, Joe Biden, right? Now, this man, it seems like he can't make a coherent statement now. It seems like, he's gonna fall asleep most of the time. But back in the day, I'll say maybe a couple of years, 20 years ago or so, he stands in the Senate.
The man's been in business for a while.
He's been in business for a while. He stands in the Senate, right? And, he says straight up, right from the horse's mouth, Israel is the best investment we have made. It is the best $3 billion we have spent. If it didn't exist, we would make another state. I don't know if you guys can play that clip or not, but it's something we should all watch. So, we have this idea that these guys are invincible. And I just want to take it back to the point again, right? If we actually look at their history, the history of Bani Israel, of the Jews, we find out that it is quite the opposite. It is literally quite the opposite. I got so tired of hearing this from elders and community members and friends and stuff like that. These guys are invincible. The fact of the matter is, as the hadith goes, right? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrates in the hadith, and the paraphrasing the meaning, right, is that Bani Israel used to be ruled by the prophets, right? And after every prophet, anyone used to be sent, they used to be ruled by them, right? Then obviously Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that after me there will be no more prophets. And if you look at their history, it amazingly like aligns with that. When they were ruled by the prophets and they obeyed them, they had victory. But when they deviated They were utterly destroyed, right? And back to that incident with Musa alayhi salam, right? Because of their arrogance and rejection of the command of Allah to go and fight the people of Canaan, right? Who were at that time, at that time, kind of like occupying Jerusalem. They were forced to wander for 40 years. And because of that, even Musa alayhi salam, he didn't get to set foot in the Holy Land. Even though he's a Nabi, he's a prophet. He's one of the most powerful prophets of Allah. And I think this is something we as a community need to understand, is that it's not enough to say we believe if we're not ready to follow, we're not ready to obey, we're not ready to put our intellect aside for a second and say, hey, you know, to me the numbers look too big. For me, it looks like too big of a gap. What if it's a promise of Allah?
I mean, look here. Of course, it's a promise of Allah. Yani wa'dallahi haqq. There's no question about that. But even when you're looking at even numbers, yani it's a joke, right? I mean, we are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world.
Yeah.
Versus 6 million Jews. Yani, so it's not even the issue of numbers. I mean, if you want to look at numbers, even, right? I mean, to say that, oh, they're what do we? Yani, this is exactly like what the Jews at that time, Bani Israel, said to, when they were said enter Jerusalem, they said no, they're too big. They're gonna, and in here we have the numbers, but the cowardice is, is it? Look, so let's go back. Is it cowardice, or is it by design? The shackles have been put on this ummah. What is it that's, and I know that if the moment there is a call to liberate Masjid al-Aqsa, to liberate Palestine, to liberate the Holy Lands, massive Muslims from all over the world would join the battle to liberate Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. But then why is it not happening?
Yeah, I think you definitely hit it on the head, right? That unfortunately the reality we're living in, we're seeing is something that is by design, right? We're living in a very strange time frame in the Ummah, right? The time frame we're living in is that there's no authority for Islam, there's no state,
there's no authority, okay.
there's no
leadership,
there's no leadership, there's no rulership. This only happened one time in the history of Islam. Before before 1924, before the Uthmani Khilafah fell, this occurred only once, and that was when the Mongols sacked Baghdad, right? And they took the Khalifa at the time out,
took out the Khilafah,
and killed him, right? And that was a lapse of 3 years. 3 years that the Ummah went without a Khalifa, right? And then the ulama were going crazy. You mentioned the role of the ulama, right? At that time, they were going crazy. What this is impossible. This is unimaginable. This is something that, how can we have Islam without the without the ruler, without the Khalifa, etc. And they produced him, right? The Khalifa migrated from Baghdad to Egypt, right?
The Fatimid, that was a Fatimid that came to. Anyway, go on. Yeah. But they wanted the Khilafah.
Yes,
that's the issue.
I mean, these were the scholars of Islam, and they recognize its importance. We live in this unique time, in the sense that we are an ummah without a head, right? And you're there for the picking. You're there for the picking, right? And people are coming and eating, basically from the ummah, because you can't. It's like an orphan children, right? You can do whatever you want. There's no parents to watch out. There's no authority figures. There's no nothing. And we find ourselves
protection. There's nothing.
Yeah, there's no protection. I'm kind of forgetting your original question.
Yeah, no. The point was that look, you have a situation where why is it that the ummah not moving? I mean, the ummah moves. Ummah wants to move.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that the ummah is saying that okay, we don't care about Masjid al-Aqsa, Palestine. Yes, maybe we forget a little bit here and there, but the moment something happens in Gaza, the moment there's just like a year ago, I think it was less than maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, right?
Yeah.
This year, it was 2021, when the whole issue was going on in Gaza, for instance. It almost looked like some army in the Muslim world was about to move. Maybe even Pakistan army could have actually moved to say you need to stop this whatever is happening in Masjid al-Aqsa. It was like, so is it that where is the problem? I mean, you said, of course, we don't have the Khilafah, or we don't have the leadership, so there is no one to to follow, right? What's something else that what's another issue here? I mean, for instance, I'll give you an example. A lot of times you talk to the Muslims, they'll say, oh, look, we lost the 6-day war. Right?
Yeah.
And they have been drilled in their minds that you cannot defeat Israel. We lost to Israel. We lost to Israel. Look at all the Arab. They went, the Syrians, the Egyptians, look, we couldn't do anything. The Jordanians do. I mean, what is the reality of this war? What really happened?
It's so weird that you bring that up, right? So there's a couple of wars in the recent modern history that kind of happened from the inception of the state of Israel, right? There was the original war that broke out right as Israel was declared. They declared themselves a nation. And you had for example, let's just focus on the Jordanians for a second. They said, let's go, let's mobilize, let's get our tanks, let's get our soldiers out there, right? And you find that they went up to a certain line, right, from Jordan to the the entity of Israel, and they would not go any further. Kind of weird, right? And
that they wouldn't move forward.
But
as if somebody's telling them you can't go forward.
Well, what's more weird than that is that during this time period, around the 1948 and stuff like that, their general,
the Jordanian,
was I believe it's like John Glove.
Oh, okay.
It was a British officer, was an acting, basically officer of the army. Strange.
Very strange.
So it's I mean,
it's the British who are running the show already.
It's a British. They're running the show, right? Like these guys had a certain mandate. So just to give it a little bit of context, right? So 1948, what's the big thing going on in the world, right? World War II has
just ended,
right? The world powers are in shambles, right? The British, the French, all these guys, they're kind of, they're devastated. They're devastated from the war, right? And here comes the U.S. to kind of take the spoils of war, build itself up, right? So then you have the Declaration of Israel. Basically, these things are erupting. But I mean, like, no one just leaves someplace. You're not someone of power if you leave someplace and you don't leave things. You don't leave certain order in place, right? So the British had their officers as the military commanders of these so-called independent Arab nations. And you see the history, like, when they were in times of victory, they didn't go forward. When they were in times of making things happen, they didn't go forward, right? So that was the inception. The 6 Days War, right? Obviously, we see that, so it seems that the Arab territories around Israel lost, right? But we never talk about what happened after that. I mean, the details within that are kind of are crazy too. I don't know how much time we have. And
meaning the ceasefire also.
The ceasefire,
the so-called ceasefire.
Like, why did they stop? Why didn't they move forward? Like, who gave them the signal?
Right.
Those details are intricate. Maybe that's a different discussion. But we never talk about what happened after the 6 Years' War, which is the War of Yom Kippur.
Hopefully, next time we need to discuss this. This has to be discussed to the detail.
Yeah.
That this 6-day war was nothing but a plan.
Yeah.
To the point that as if it was planned to lose or to make it look like, okay, the Arabs can't do anything.
Yes.
We just need the state of Israel, just like today, right? Where you have a situation where everybody's being told you just have to normalize.
Exactly.
There is no more fighting. Just stop this.
You can't do anything about it. I mean, that's just what it is. But really quick though, like, okay, the 6 Days War happened, right? But what about the war after that? The War of Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, yeah.
Right? This is where it was completely the opposite, right? That Egypt and the Syria, Jordan, whatever, they demolished.
They were almost inside Tel Aviv.
They destroyed the Israeli military, their aircrafts, their tanks. I believe it was like more than 400 or 500 tanks obliterated, their air force obliterated. And they were at that line of where they could, if they wanted, conquer it, right? But what did they say at that point? They're like, yeah, we're good. Now we're ready for the peace process. Mm. And so, I mean, this thing is, I think, pretty aptly named the betrayal. Like, they were at the doorstep of Al-Aqsa, right? They were at the doorstep of these places, and then they kind of, they're like, okay, we're done. And I think this gets into a little bit. I don't know how much time we have about the understanding political ideas as an ummah.
We have 10 minutes.
In the sense that
10 minutes, about 10 minutes.
In the sense that, like, we don't understand really how
20 minutes. Okay.
Oh, 20 minutes. Okay. So we don't really understand, like, how the world works, right? And I mean, I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, right? This is unfortunately the confusion we live in, right? everyone's trying their best to kind of make sense of it. But really, if you look at it, there is three types of states that exist. States as in entities, powers, countries. Three states: leading nations, three nations that exist: leading nations, orbiting nations, and subjugated nations, essentially. Now, the way it makes sense to me, right, is that leading nations make the plan. They have objectives, they have ideas, they have something greater.
Ideological states.
They have something greater they're fighting for. They have a vision for the world and they want to make a plan for it. Okay. And then there's orbiting nations, is they want to figure out how they can fit into that plan. Right?
They're going around.
Yeah.
Trying to fit in.
Or fit into that order that's been created. And then there's subjugated nations. These guys just take orders, So you make the order, you figure out how you can fit into the order, or you just take an order. Unfortunately, this is kind of the state of the Muslims, is that majority of our so-called countries are either like subjugated nations, they only take orders, or they are at the best, you could say the best condition in this current reality, they're orbiting nations where they're trying to figure out, okay, how can I kind of fit in and get my benefits and, but we are missing leadership as an ummah.
So when we say, when you ideological nations, so what ideologies do we have today?
And first of all, it sometimes that's a heated word, right? Ideologies, this or that. But I mean, nations that have vision, nations that have a plan, they want something greater than themselves. As I'm sure the academics, they said there's no more ideologies anymore. The game is over. We had the Cold War between the U.S. on one side, and then the USSR on one side. We had capitalism on one side, and we had communism on one side. And this war is over since the 1990s. Right? The capitalist won, the communists lost, and this is the end of history, as we've heard so many times.
Okiyama and stuff.
Yeah, and we've heard mashallah, a lot of speakers and stuff like that. It's over, but still there lives one challenger, right? And that is the Muslim Ummah, right? Because the Muslims, the Crusaders had them for 86 years, brutally conquered, captured and occupied Al-Quds, Palestine, Jerusalem. But the Muslims came back because our vision, our objective, our mission, it's not attached to our lives. It's not attached to our it's not attached to us personally, right?
So see, here's the thing. Meaning, when you say that, is it because we did not take Islam as an ideology?
I think so. As I was kind of looking into this, just kind of reflecting a little bit, I feel like personally, just my kind of view on it is that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just destroyed a whole generation, like Bani Israel, who refused to believe, even after they saw it with their eyes, refused to believe in the promise of Allah. Allah destroyed them and replaced them with other people. And in a way, I feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing that with us too, right? Allah doesn't need us, we need Him. So if we're not there to be as a collective people that want to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be deserving of His promise, well, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is,
so
clean the state.
That's, of course, there's no question about that. I mean, Allah Azza wa Jal, if you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But my thing is, when we say, because you said that, look, there are nations with visions, right? And then there are those nations that are just orbiting around that vision of that, trying to fit in somehow, somewhere, survival kind of thing, and others are just gone. They just take orders. So how do these nations, who are the leading nations, what makes them leading nations? Where do they get that strength from to become leading nations?
Okay, I think that's a really, really good question. So being a leading nation actually has nothing to do with your material might. I would say it has almost nothing to do with your material might, because for certainty, the nation of Muhammad in its inception was from its beginning a leading nation. Even obviously there's the Makki period and the Madani period in Islam, but even in the Makki period, Muhammad the vision was as a leading nation, right? We will conquer Rome, we will conquer this, right? So the Muslims have always been, when they're following Islam, a leading nation, because it has nothing to do with material might. Even when the Muslims were, struggling to conquer the Arabian Peninsula, right, and fight the Quraysh, at the same time they were sending delegations to Rome, to Persia, to these massive empires, because they have something to give. So get back to your question. They have something to offer the world, right? They have an idea. They have, in the modern context, we call it an ideology, right? An idea or
because
a deen.
look, because if you look at today, I mean, today, other than US, I don't see any other nation that has something that they're saying that we have an ideology and we want the whole world to follow this, right? I mean, the Russians at the end have also become capitalist in many ways, right? The USSR fell apart.
Chinese
obviously.
are capitalist.
Chinese are now capitalist. They're talking all capitalist language, except it's a one party system. And you never know what that So that's what's going on. But they have adopted capitalism in many ways now as their system. So other than us, the Muslims, there is no one that is saying there is an alternative to this whole exploitation, this whole thing that's taking place all over, whether it's Africa, Middle East, wherever, right? So what makes a leading nation? You were saying it's an idea and something that they have to present to the world. What do we have to present to the world?
We have the truth. We have Jannah, right? These people are after the dunya, right? And they want to make this their paradise. Well, we have something better. We have the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have. So here's the thing, right? Sometimes we think about it like in the sense that, like, I like my iPhone, I like my Mac, but I like all these great things. I don't know if I can go back, but being a leading nation has nothing to do with the technology. It has to do with what you're offering.
That's what I'm asking. What do we have to offer?
We're offering that, like,
you said Jannah. Fine, I understand that. That's Jannah. People will say, well, that's good, Jannah. I'm talking about Muslims. We believe there's Jannah, there is Nar, there's Akhirah, all of that. But for me in this life, what is it that is there in Islam for me to come and say, this I'm going to stand up against this unjust world order that takes over and colonizes and takes over people's resources and all of that. What do you offering me right now? This is what I see, and it's not perfect, but it's working. How long it will work is another question, but it's working. So what do you have to say regarding this?
Even let's just take a step back, right? We're talking about sometimes exploitation, Africa, all these countries. I mean,
even Palestine. At the end of the day, it's a takeover, right?
On a cost level, but you could say, maybe someone could say, here, okay, I understand this is happening, but my life is okay. The bills are kind of getting paid. We're moving forward. And this is really what we're kind of working with today. And the thing is, look, what we're offering is that there is more to your life than being an insignificant collection of molecules and atoms and randomly being born, going about your life like an animal, essentially, eating, sleeping, having children, and khalas, that's it, that's your life. We have something more. You don't you want to know where you came from? Don't you want to know like what this life is about? Don't you want to know where you're going? What this whole thing was about? We're here to offer you that piece that, for example, that capitalism never can. It says capitalism, what it does is it says, okay, you know what, we're not going to worry about that.
No, but what you're saying, what does that have to do? I mean, can you connect that, what you just said?
Yeah.
Can you connect that to the issue of Palestine? But what we have to, where are you going? Where did you come from? What we have to offer? How can you connect that to the issue of Palestine? Is there a way to do that?
Maybe you can expand on that, but
for instance, it is a discussion at 10 minutes. I mean, for instance, that the world today lives, yes, you and I here are sitting, we're talking about Palestine, but Mali is suffering the same way. Most of Africa is suffering the same way.
Yeah.
Kashmir is suffering the same way. All, so there's constant suffering only, and it's like almost the law of the jungle, right? The survival of the fittest.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the big guns and you're the only ones that can survive, the rest are either humiliated, crushed, destroyed, or taken over, conquered, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Now you can conquer a people to give them a better way of life, or you conquer people just to exploit them. Right? What do we have to, in comparison to what capitalism has done to the world, what do we have to offer? Is it justice? Is it a better economic system? Is it a better social system? Is it a system that will make you live like human beings? What is it that we are offering to say that, okay, Palestine should come back to its original state because of this ideology that we are offering?
Yeah. Okay. So, So, what is sort of the alternative, right? You said, which is really true. If you look at the Muslim world, if you look at the world today in general, chaos, bloodshed, starvation, genocide, all these kind of things, right? And
now Burkina Faso, just yesterday,
chaos. Yeah, and most of us, as we're observing this, we're like, this is crazy. I just don't understand. Why can't there just be peace? Why is the world in this state of chaos the way it is? I mean, there's someone that's in charge right now. And the answer to this question is that actually, I'll tell you this, the world is actually in peace. The world is right now, the world is in peace. And you know why?
I'm surprised to hear that from you, but go on. I would like to know what that means.
So when we think about the word peace, right? For example, let's take it back to the Palestine issue, right? Since the war of the 6 Days War and the War of Yom Kippur and stuff like that, this area has been in the middle of the peace process for how many years?
I like that. You put me to it. I was thinking, what's going on? Okay.
So really, it has been.
It's been going to. This is what peace process looks like.
This is the peace process, and here's why.
And this is what peace looks like.
This is what peace. So in the world we live in the order we live in, this is what peace looks like. If this is the peace you want, okay, stay with this. If you want peace that we know in our hearts, in our fitrah, that what peace is supposed to be like, then that can only come from Islam, from the
source of peace,
from the source of peace. And I know it's kind of weird, so I just want to explain a little bit if we have like a minute or two. But
yeah, go ahead.
Is that like, okay, you know what? Okay, let's take a step back, right? I was so when I was thinking about this, right? I called my wife one time. I was just asking, so what is peace? And there's like yelling and screaming in the background, and like you can hear things banging like on the walls and stuff like that. I can't talk about this. Peace, peace is quiet, and peace is things are the way they're supposed to be. Bam, call ends. And I'm thinking about afterwards. But what is instrumental in peace is order. When things are in their proper place, then we got the microphone, we got the seats. This is in a peaceful state. Peace doesn't just mean that things are perfect. Peace means things are where they're supposed to be. The world
they're in the right place. They fit their place.
Yes. So the world that we see today, how it's running is like a machine, right? Like I said, there's the nations that create the order. There's nations that fit into the order, and then there's people that take orders. The order of the world today, things are running as they're supposed to be. Why? Because the leading nation remains a leading nation. The weaker nations, they remain weaker nations. The rich become richer. The poor become poorer. Things are running exactly how it is supposed to run.
How the system is the world order today is supposed to run this way.
It's running in a peaceful state. Yes. Because
for its definition.
By its definition. So here's the thing. If we're asking for peace, and it goes back to the whole Palestinian thing, is that we got to stop being naive as a community.
So this is good. Hold on. So you're saying that if we're going to ask for peace within this capitalist system that we're living in, the peace that you're going to get is what you're already getting.
And worse.
Yeah, kids are being shot up in the middle of Jerusalem. children are being arrested and taken in. Women and girls are being harassed by the Israeli police and the military.
Because these are
every 6 months there is incursion.
Because
in
these
Gaza.
are the necessary things in order to maintain order, in order to maintain peace. So if you want,
because their peace comes with this type of humiliation, that they know that this peace will cause so much frustration amongst the people that there's going to be some type of a
it's
reaction.
It's a natural. It's from their from the perspective of the leading nations. It is the necessary sacrifice, unfortunately, to maintain order. And this is not something we're making up, right?
Yeah.
They say
this is what the system says it is.
They say it from their own mouths, right? I don't have the quote right now. It's a famous quote, right, by Madeleine Albright. As I'm sure you know.
I remember.
You know, she's like,
on the 500 children being
because of your sanctions, the U.S., right? The reporter asked, over 500,000 Iraqi children have died. Is this really worth it?
Yeah, 60 minutes, I remember.
And her answer is like, yeah, it is.
She said it's a tough decision, but it's worth it.
It's worth it because why? Because it allows you to remain in a state of order, which for you is peace, right? So see, here's a problem. It's not just there's bad people. The whole order is bad. We need to change the whole order, right? And that's
so that's what's happening. So in conclusion, because of the time here, and this is only part one, inshallah. This was a very good discussion, by the way. But so this. What we are saying, it's a question time. Let's go to the question. I have my own, but it says, does this mean that the Ummah can be liberated from the intellectual decline and neo-colonial world order without the Khilafah state?
I'm not sure what the background to that question is, but
does this mean that the Ummah can't be liberated from intellectual decline and neo-colonial world order without the Khilafah state? I mean, no, I don't know what for me, if I'm reading that question, I would say no. I think the issue is this discussion, it shows ourselves that we are intellectually actually understanding what's happening. So, but the order is not in place. The Khilafah state is not there. The order is not there. The Islamic order is not there. But the Muslims are waking up and realizing that it's not the issue of individuals, and it's not the issue of just trying to change things here, but the whole order, as you said, is a mess. Yeah. And according to the system today, this order is peaceful.
It is peaceful, yeah.
And this is what peace looks like.
Yeah.
And it's just maintenance. Okay, so I get that's but so let me, to follow up to that question, because okay, what makes you think about these things and not somebody else? As an individual, right? I mean, what makes you think about these things, realize these things, discuss these things, come on the show and say, look, we need to discuss Palestine? What makes, because that's unique, right? Now, today, people with kids, young brothers, young men, brothers, whatever, or sisters, whatever, they rather discuss the show on YouTube, what's famous on Netflix.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think there's anything like special. Are they? Because look, I think most people, right? They are trying to figure out what is going on, with the world, right? Okay, and sometimes we get into we're trying to figure things out, and you might get confused. Okay, maybe it's the secret group here, maybe it's whatever, but the problem is lack of understanding, right? Lack of understanding of what Islam has to say about these things that clarify things, right? Politics, about how the world works, about how the mission, what the mission of Islam is, what the history is, right? Part of that is working with people that have this understanding. Part of that is just pursuing it. But so I would say it's not really unique. Alhamdulillah, there's so many people all around the world saying look, I feel it. I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my mind. This is not how the world is supposed to be. I mean, people, even non-Muslims, in this country, they feel it. For most of us that grew up here, right? People are like, man, the system is messed up. I don't trust it. I don't trust the government. I don't trust this. Oh, my family's broken down. Everybody is feeling it, right? Everybody's trying
in
to
whatever way.
Yeah.
So if you look at, for instance, the climate, the whole climate thing that happened a couple of weeks ago, everybody was screaming climate, everything is burning and this and that. And now the climate conference, whatever, is over. What did they achieve? Meaning in this peace that they want for the world, right? I mean, it seems like every single person that I heard that came on that, in the conference and spoke, every single one was saying that, look, we have been exploited. We are the poor countries are the first ones to feel the pain of this climate change situation. And while in reality, most of the rich countries came out with the best contracts, people made their deals, and we continue as the way we've been continuing for the last whatever years. So if just the weather can't, suffering, right? People are suffering from just that. Imagine people who've been part of this colonialist structure, basically sitting in a jail. Gaza is a jail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and I've been to Gaza. I spent a lot of time in that area, about 3 months. The whole area is a jail. You got thousands of people, 4 million people in Gaza who are literally in a jail. How does that happen in such a so-called modern situation where you put that many people in a prison-like situation?
It's unimaginable. And this is the world of peace. Sometimes I think about it too. Obviously we think about the physical aspect of it, right? Like maybe you got shot with a bullet, maybe you can't go to a certain point. But man, what if you can't even respect your father because your father can't protect you? The pain is so manifold. The pain is so expansive. But for those in power, in leadership, this is the necessary evil. Just like Pharaoh was I built this. I need to maintain this. If
whatever the price.
If one child all the children of Bani Israel in this every other year have to die, well, that's the price of peace. So I just kind of, I don't know how much time we have. But
I like that 5 minutes. So the idea that the Pharaonic system, the Pharaonic, the Pharaoh, the way they were thinking is that, look, if we have to kill every other child every other year of the Bani Israel, that could be 50,000 children.
Which is such a small number compared to how many children die nowadays, right?
But he had no problem saying, let's get rid of it. It's not a problem as long as the world order, the world order of Fir'aun does not change. It remains. It must remain. So Musa alayhi salam comes along anyway. How can we end this in the proper way? Musa alayhi salam shows up on the scene no matter what Fir'aun thinks is going to happen. For hope, Muslims, that look, no matter what, for every Musa there is for every Fir'aun there is a Musa.
Yeah, subhanallah, there's what can you say, man? It's just crazy, right? Pharaoh did whatever he could to kill Musa, and he ended up raising him, in his palace. He ended up bringing him up. The promise of Allah is the truth, right? But for us, right? Here's the thing, man. May Allah make us like the Musa alayhi salam. A lot of times we think, okay, inshallah, my kids will change the world. Inshallah, things will be better in the future. Forget all that. We as an ummah, we need to be like, Musa alayhi salam. We need to be the ones that are bringing about that change. We're calling for that change. And, the whole issue of Palestine, unfortunately, it's become so ugly in a sense that because it's like shirk and so many dirty elements have been mixed into it. We need to purify it again. That, look, this is an Islamic issue. We're proud of it. We're happy about it. And the solution can only come from Islam. And like I kind of mentioned, right, truth kind of stands in front of falsehood, right? Today we have so many people allying with the Palestinian cause and doing this, and they have their ropes and they have their whatever.
Standing for this just has become do some protest where some clothing that looks like the Palestinians wear or the Arab wear, and then go and do some dabka and eat some falafel, and then that's the activism of today.
And it makes you scared, right? You're in competition to that. Sometimes we think to ourselves, no one's going to listen to me. Who am I? What can I do? But we have to be like Musa alayhi salam. ask Allah for help and throw the staff.
I mean, before we end this, on the top of that, what we see in a lot of so-called activism and this whole things that go on, even the flags that these people raise, right? I mean, the level of decline where the flags are that they raise itself is a flag given to them by the British. I mean, is it that they don't, they don't see what kind of trap that they're in, or the level of decline, or is it they have lost, they've given up so much that says, okay, I'm willing to give up all of this. Yes, this flag was given to us by our own enemies. Yes, it's Sykes-Picot lines that they're going to draw. Yes, this is what we have left. So let me just get whatever is left. I mean, is that what's happening when you see most of the people who are talking about Palestine?
Sometimes it feels like that, to be honest with you. It seems like the whole Palestine, it's kind of painful to see sometimes. I graduated not too long ago, but even in like the university setting, right, where activism is kind of at its peak usually, right? A lot of times you see all of these causes, right, mixed in with people of like, LGBTQ, all these people they're I mean, man, you think the promise of Allah is going to come to you if you're together with those that are blatantly saying against us. I think we should put that to the side though and forget about that, because that's nothing. It's not going to take us anywhere. But for us that care about what's going on, we need to be brave about it. We need to be bold about it. We need to kind of be open about it, because people are looking for answers. Right, and truth stands clear.
So inshallah, I mean, this is not inshallah. We'll continue having. We need to continue to have this discussion. Inshallah, that on Palestine, this is not going to be the last one. Inshallah, we will continue having different people and the Sheikh back, inshallah, and discuss this. Brothers and sisters. Also, before I end, we do have a conference coming up also regarding the Sharia. What is Sharia, the rules under the Sharia, all kinds of different branches, all inshallah, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, inshallah, that we will be having conference, different ulama, scholars, teachers will be coming and discussing, inshallah. That's going to be the 25th, 26th, and 27th. And it's 3 days. Give me the names. Just give me the 24th, which is evening, 24th, 25th, 26th. And I think, those are the dates, but we'll put those dates out as you guys can see it, inshallah. But on this topic that we were discussing, Palestine, brothers and sisters, look, one thing has to be very clear in the minds of the Muslims. Islam is a system. Islam is an ideology. Islam is a system given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of this earth. And Allah subhanahu and this dunya and this universe, Rabbul Alameen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create this for fun and play. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us and gave us a goal, and that is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to implement the rules and regulations of Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is what it means to say that Allah is Rabb anyway. That is ar-rububiyyah. That is the reason why we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the legislator. He is the one who gives us the Sharia. He is the one who tells us what to do and what not to do. The issue, whether it's the issue of Palestine or whether it's the issue of eating haram or halal, right? Whether it's the issue of eating zabiha or it's the issue of Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak, all of it has to be taken back to the same rules that we are so adamant to follow when it comes to eating rules, our dietary rules. The same rules when it comes to politics, the same rules when it comes to occupations of the Muslim lands, the same rules when it comes to economic system of Muslim lands, the same rules that when it comes to the social system, the justice that that's so much lacking in the Muslim world. All of that goes back to the same roots. Why are we suffering this? Because the moment we let go of the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, that gave us Palestine anyway in the first place. The moment we let go, we lost Palestine. And we will lose Palestine, and we will have Palestine. It will not come back in our hands until and unless we go back to that deen that gave us Palestine in the first place. And that is what we need to understand, that Islam is a system, it's a way of life. It's not, let me do what I want with Islam. No, ادخلوا في السلم كافة ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. And inshallah, with that, I will end. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, will be back next Jum'ah, 8 p.m. بإذن ta'ala. And tomorrow we will have the youth corner بإذن ta'ala. Comment, question, put your questions out there, inshallah, and we will continue to have these types of discussions with the youth, with scholars, teachers, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, jazakumullahu khairan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
سبحان منزله بليلة قدره درب الهداية واضح التبيان يتلوه أحمد للدنا وهي التي عطشت لقطر هداية هتاني سبحان منزله بليلة قدره درب الهداية واضح التبيان يتلوه أحمد للدنا وهي التي عطشت لقطر هداية هتاني هابت به وزنت بنبت زروعه حسنا وآتت أكلها بتداني لو كان أنزل فوق قود شامخ لرأيته متصدع الأركان